It's time to learn from the best game devs. Tony Chan here, and welcome to episode 90 of Game Dev Loadout, where I chat with inspiring professionals every Wednesday morning to bring you motivation and tactics for a successful gaming career. Now let's chat with today's future guest, Katharine Neil. Katharine, it is game time. Are you ready?
I certainly am.
Yes. She has 19 plus years of experience in the game industry, working on a variety of genres, including racing games, third-person shooters, management sims, and more. She blogs and speaks at GDC, and currently she's doing freelance work as the native designer at Nyam Nyam Games, currently working on a project called Astrologaster. And there's different ways you can pronounce that, but go ahead, Katharine, just give us a bit about your personal life and how you got started in the game industry.
Well, I've moved around a lot. I'm a New Zealander, but currently I live in France. So, when I was much younger, I moved to Australia and I had been studying, electronic music. And then one of the best opportunities available was getting a job working as a sound designer. So I got a job, at Melbourne House, which was then later bought by Atari, Infogrames and then Atari, as their sound designer. And then I was there for about 7 years, and I was kind of jealous of the designers, I think, because I got more and more into that kind of more of an interest. I really got more into gaming as an employee. We used to play Counter-Strike every lunchtime and after work every day. So I was playing Counter-Strike every lunchtime for several hours after work as well. So I got more into gaming, working as a game developer, I guess, and less into sound. And then I decided I wanted to live in Europe because I'd been to France on holiday and I liked it. And so I've tried 4 times to immigrate to France. Hopefully this is my final and most successful time. And so I worked at a couple of companies in France, programming and sound, and then I went back to Australia because I got kicked back because my visa expired, and I worked in design and did a bit of writing, and then went back to France and then did more programming. And I forgot to mention, my job as a sound designer was like a dual role, sound designer and audio programmer. So these days, I've got 2 gigs at the moment. I'm a narrative designer for Nyam Nyam, working on Astrologaster or Astrologaster, however you want to pronounce it. And I'm also working on a serious game where I'm the designer and I'm the sole programmer. So, whoever wants to give me money, I just do whatever. If someone's going to give me money, I'll do whatever role. As long as it's not art, because I can't do art. I really can't do art. And I've never been a producer or a project manager. I'm kind of a general dog's body, I guess.
It sounds like you still got a lot of expertise in a lot of different things. I'm curious, do you want to work at a big company or do you want to remain as a freelancer?
Well, most of the first 10 years of my career was different AAA studios on console games. And there are definite advantages for working in a more corporate environment. But basically I earn less now as a freelancer than I did when I was 22 years old. Now I'm going to reveal my age. that was 20 years ago. And so, but yes, it's my lifestyle choice, I guess. I mean, really, I'm getting to do really cool stuff now. And I was doing, in AAA, you get to do cool stuff, but it's very specialized. You have less freedom. I mean, you just can't just randomly, go around the world, giving off your opinions about whatever. If you know what I mean? Kind of, it's like it can be like a gilded cage. If you hear the expression, you're in a cage, it's a cage made of gold. If you paid well. Yeah, I don't know if I really answered your question. I'd say
you have more freedom, basically. You have more freedom, and there's.
But yeah, it's definitely lifestyle choice because I mean, I do live like a student, I guess. I mean, I live in shared accommodation. I live in I kind of live in what many people think of as the ghetto, because I kind of live, you know, on TV when they have like I don't know, on Fox News or whatever, you have like footage from, you know, there's riots in France, in the suburbs of France, right? And they're burning cars. That's where I live.
Oh no!
And it's fine. It's cheap and like, but it's you know, like, so basically I have a very cheap lifestyle, and that's the only way I managed to. And also, you know, I don't have kids. I don't want kids, and I like living in shared. You know, I like with roommates, flatmates. You call them roommates, don't you?
Yeah.
Like that.
You're safe over there, right? Yeah. Are you safe at least?
Oh no! Like, I mean, it's basically I'm a beneficiary of racism, basically, because like people are really scared. Like people are scared of where I live. Like, I mean, some people are scared of where I live, and it's kind of a lot in their imaginations. Like really, so like it's an immigrant suburb, and I'm an immigrant, so it makes sense. But you know, it's kind of like a very Muslim, very black area, and as like, which kind of, you know, the current world climate, like people are kind of irrational about that. But for me, it just means like I get to have like hot dogs at midnight during Ramadan, basically, because they sell them below my apartment building sometimes. You know, over Ramadan, it's like there's this party atmosphere in the evenings. So that's, you know, I'm not Muslim, but, you know, like there are benefits to living in a Muslim suburb.
Mm-hmm. I see what you mean.
Sorry, that's a bit off track, but you know, like, yeah, it's like I think if you have less money and you have to make do with less money, and that means you end up in more interesting life situations. Sometimes, I mean, it can be shit, but also, you know, because I moved from audio and sound, like audio and more technical, like roles like game programming, into writing for games. I find that the cultural experiences I've had really feed into that more. Like, so being forced into situations where you can't avoid the world, like you can't buy yourself out of situations where you have to deal with shitty landlords. Sorry, I promised not to swear, but I just did. Sorry. For example, or, you know, you have to meet people from all walks of life, and work alongside, you know, live alongside all sorts of different people who are kind of thrown together. I think that benefits me creatively, because I don't live in a bubble. I live in an interesting kind of milieu. Yeah, so I can't complain.
Yeah, the environment. Yeah, so you're saying that it leads into your game creative, like the games you're creating. Sometimes it leaks into that.
I think so. I mean, I think people forget, you know, because we work with technology and everything, people forget that, you know, we're creating culture. You know, it's like working in TV or film, I guess. And I think people in TV and film, because they have a longer tradition, and people, you know, it's like, you know, like if you're writing a novel, you know, there's that kind of cliche of the novelist who accumulates life experiences so they have something to write about. I think there's a tendency to forget that in games, we're pretty much doing this, you know, we're creating not novels, but we're creating characters and worlds, and, you know, that's got to draw on your life experiences, and not just, you know, TV and film you've seen, but actual people you've known and actual experiences you've lived. Like, you know, what is it like to work a minimum wage job, you know, in the fast food industry or something, and have a boss who bullies you, and like, but also have good times out the back messing with pizza ingredients or something with your colleagues. I think, like, cause sometimes I think back to the minimum wage jobs I had when I was younger, and, you know, what it's like to be unemployed and trying to claim unemployment benefits. These things, I mean, we don't make games about those things directly, but, you know, I think once you've got a cushy upper middle class job, like working in the game industry, you're never going to have those life experiences again. And, like, you know, no one's going to give me a job at KFC again, you know, like, even if I wanted one. And yet that's there's no substitute for having a job at KFC. You know, like the people you meet, the customers you have, for example. I probably shouldn't like draw out this metaphor of working at KFC too long, but you know, like I used to be a cleaner, like an industrial cleaner, like minimum wage job, and I did that for a few years, like part time, and just what it's like to be a normal person doing a normal job. It's like we're totally insulated from that in the game industry, and yet, like, you know, most people have low-paying jobs with, you know, these kind of experiences. How can we possibly relate? How can we make culture for them if they're not, if we can't relate to normal people? I think that's a problem in in a rarefied world of the game industry.
I wonder if, since you said, like, I wonder if, since games are becoming more accessible and, you know, there's engines out there that we could use as free, like Unity or Unreal, I wonder if gamers are starting to, well, eventually start to create these kinds of games that you're talking about. I
think they are, like, I mean, there's this game, an IGF winner, that's the Independent Games Festival, called Cart Life, a few years ago, which was about, you know, like what it's like to, I actually didn't play it, but, you know, like to run your little small business, eking out like a living. And then I think it's kind of paradoxical because, as you're right, like on the one hand, yeah, like tools are massively more accessible than when I first started, massively. I mean, I actually wrote an article about this that was on Gamer Sutra, like a year ago, I think. It's called How We Design Games Now and Why, and I look at the kind of history of game development technology and how it's changed and what that's kind of meant, how it's changed the game business a bit. But yeah, like I think on the one hand we have this massive opening up of game production and accessibility to people who don't, you know, have to have an expensive degree or, you know, have thousands and thousands of hours to learn stuff to make games. But on the other hand, like games degrees, right? They weren't around when I first got in the industry. And I think it's great. There's all this kind of education, but it sort of raises the bar of accessibility to get into the AAA industry, to get a job and make a living. Because making indie games, it's very, very hard to make a living, and a lot of it's to do with luck and, you know, but if you've got a family to support or, you know, maybe you come from a family who said, look, you know, you have to get a real job, right? The AAA mainstream industry can provide you, parts of it anyway, can provide you with a real job. But to get in these days, like there seems to be an expectation of these really expensive specialist game degrees, right? And that's a really high bar, and I think it's kind of unnecessary. Like I was trained on the job, you know, like I had a music degree of all things, and you know, I think that's really hard if you're looking for diversity in the industry. Like that really filters out people who can't, like if they do a college degree, they can't specialize. I mean, you know, like if you're thinking, okay, going to do a college degree. I'm trying to speak an American language here. Like even though your listeners are probably international, but if you want a college degree and then to you know have a career and stuff, I mean it's pretty risky getting I don't want to discourage anyone, but you know, if you're from a working class background, for example, you probably think it's pretty risky doing a specialist game development degree, especially in the types of degree programs that are well regarded by the industry, and those are expensive private institutions often. Like specializing like that on the off chance that you'll get a job in games, I mean that's a bit different from doing a general computer science degree, for example, or a more general arts degree that, you know, might lead to a sort of wider variety of jobs. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wonder, you know, like I do worry, I do worry for the, like while we're getting more diversity in the industry, in some ways, I'm seeing less diversity in terms of social class. Like, I don't know if I could have gone into the industry into the mainstream industry, you know, from my background. I mean, not that I'm super working class, but, you know, my mother, you know, was a minimum wage worker. So I don't know. I don't know. Sorry, I'm being a bit cynical right now, but
no, I think that's what's going to make this episode really interesting, because you're telling us your situation, your environment, and, you know, your thoughts on the game industry, which I think is really important for us game devs to listen to. And also, like, we could go ahead and, like, take this further as well, if you don't mind, like, because I want to, you know, you talk about your environment, you talk about the things you had to go through with the visa and freelance work. I want to take us to, like, your worst moment of your career, that one moment that's still vivid in your mind. Can you, like, be very detailed and tell us that personal story of a struggle or a bad moment that you had to overcome?
I guess it's like a couple of things, a couple of moments, but they're linked. And it really is to do with physical and mostly physical health, really. You know, I'm a very healthy, well, I'm lucky. Like, not that I'm particularly healthy, but, you know, like, I'm not saying that I've had any major illnesses that have affected my career. But my career has affected my health at times. So, kind of earlier on, I guess, there was one or two projects where we crunched really hard. That was, would your listeners know what crunch is in the industry?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So, and that was, and I think I suffered burnout, but I didn't, but, you know, we had no time off after. I mean, it just made me very angry and physically and mentally just, you know, I think those effects, the effects of that you carry with you for your whole life, because I know that, you know, every time there's a argument about, you know, long working hours and working conditions on social media, and people say, oh, but this is part of the job, you know, it's like, toughen up. Like, I feel irrational levels of rage, or like visceral, like I feel it physically, that I want to, you know, like punch these faceless people. It's not real, but, you know, because I physically, I really do feel, and I'm not alone in this, I really do feel there are brain cells in my brain that died and will never be replaced because of I mean, actual physical damage to my brain and mental health because of some of these bad working conditions, and that's the long hours. And so that's why people get passionate about crunch, I think. Like, the people who've gone through it and had their relationships suffer and their physical and mental health suffer. And that's one bad moment. Another bad moment was, like, you know, because I've been to and forth from France a bit, and it's, you know, I didn't really know anyone in France, and also, I don't know, it's kind of stressful. I think, like, I took a job during that period that I didn't really want. And also, I know this is going to sound trivial, but my seating position massively affects my mood and productivity. And this sounds kind of trivial, but, like, so especially if you're working as a programmer, like I've been a developer for, you know, and some of that time has been freelance. So, you know, for, like, as you said, like almost 20 years. And that does things physically to your body if you're working in front of a computer. And you see this, I've got friends who are artists, you know, who work in visual effects and game art and stuff, who have carpal tunnel syndrome. It affects their careers, you know, or they've left their career as an artist because of repetitive strain injury and stuff. And I cannot be one of those, you know, like those guys you see working in Starbucks on their laptop, and they're like got some startup going and they're like coding away in Ruby or something, and they're, you know. Mm-hmm. So I look at them and I kind of think, firstly, how can you're a programmer and you only work on one screen. How do you like, I mean, I'm seriously considering buying a third monitor because I need screen real estate. Secondly, the seating position. I need, like, no amount of yoga or mindfulness or whatever or relaxation can make up for having a terrible seating position. And I know this sounds trivial, but, like, I had a couple of years where I had headaches, severe headaches that I didn't really deal with, and I tried to power through. And if you're, especially because I was working as a programmer at the time, especially if you're a programmer, you have intense periods of concentration where you're not thinking about your body. And if you're, I'm quite short, and if your chair is too high and you don't have a keyboard drawer and things aren't at the right position, and you can research this, you can look on the internet and find all the correct heights for everything. If you don't have that and you have mysterious headaches or pain and stuff, and you go and do yoga and stuff and it doesn't work, or you like, check your seating position, because basically if you want to stick around working with computers as a game developer doing intense kind of work, it's going to catch up to you eventually. And I had a period where I just didn't realize what was happening, and I was a bad worker, because of that. And it was something as simple as my seating position. Seriously, like, it's a small thing, but it just ruin 2 years of my...
Yeah. A past guest, Cliff Harris from Positech Games, he actually just talked about what you're talking about, sitting correction or comfortability.
Really?
Aaron, he recommend game does to get Aaron chair, I believe. It's called an Aaron chair.
Like, yeah, if you own if you like Cliff, you own a company and you can afford it. Sure. I mean, they cost like $1,000 or something. Like I'm sitting right now on an IKEA chair. Like it was like, I don't know, 30 euros or something, and it's set at the lowest position. It's an office, cheap office chair. I mean, it's got like half the stuffing has come out and stuff. And I have this IKEA. I don't think they make them anymore, but I have a keyboard drawer. And honestly, everything I have is cheap, but it is at the right position. And I say, it doesn't have to be expensive. Just do the research. And I mean, you really like people will say to a short person, they'll say, "Oh, look, just put a phone book under your feet." That does not work. I honestly do not. If your employer says, "Oh, we'll just give you a little tray to put your feet on," tell them to, I mean, I can't swear on this podcast, but, tell them what to do with their phone book, basically, if you can, because it's really, and you need to be able to move around. Like, honestly, you'll just, I mean, I wish I'd taken it seriously earlier on. I mean, really, I did all sorts of yoga. I did I had heat packs. I did physio. I even saw a chiropractor, and no amount of that helped until I changed. I've got a keyboard drawer and I got my, I lowered everything, and it's like, I don't get headaches anymore. It's a miracle.
It's crazy. It all came down to that chair. So gang does, this is, I believe this is the second episode in a row. So,
well, not just the chair. Keyboard drawer, like a keyboard tray. I really recommend get your keyboard height sorted. Mm-hmm. Make sure your feet are flat on the ground. I mean, it's all on the internet. But I mean, related to that, if I may offer some other related advice, mm-hmm. is one thing that I've learned as I've gotten older, and I've said this phrase a lot as I've gotten older. It makes me feel old saying that.
Sorry about that.
It's productive, is learning about your own productivity, right? Like really longer hours. Like, it's not hard to do longer hours. I mean, your average, like, I love what I do, and so I'm tempted to do long hours all the time. And as a freelancer, it's even more tempting, right? But I know that I do it even when it's destructive, and it's really hard to. But what I've learned to do is fight against that, not for my health even, but for the quality, but for my productivity, because your brain needs pauses. Your brain, you need to be. I mean, I've found, like, I do this thing called the Pomodoro technique. I don't know if you've.
Yeah, I know about that. I think you take, like, depending on you could take a 40-minute work time, then 10-minute break, and then you repeat that process again and again. It depends on you, though.
Yeah, so I do the 25. I think the classic one is 25 minutes. So I do 25 minutes and then a 5-minute break, and forcing myself to take the. I mean, really the hard thing is forcing yourself to take the break. Yeah, I mean, but it really taking that break really works for me. Yeah, I mean, I know people aren't going to believe me. So I'm not sure if I would have believed me if I was 25 or something. But really,
it's a hard discipline.
Yeah, like I can't always manage it, because I just sit down and work, But you really start to see the difference. You can be very, the first pristine 3 hours of work of your day it's the golden kind of period. I'm not saying like work in the morning necessarily, but yeah, I mean, that's what the experience is giving me that insight into like thinking more about when I do good work, or how I do good work and how I do bad work.
Did you use that technique during crunch time? Like, what would you tell game devs that, they have to go through crunch time? What would lessen the stress from it? Like, okay, for a comfortable chair, for sure. The technique that you just mentioned could help. Like, what do you want to give them? What do you want to tell them?
Well, I mean, ultimately, crunch is a socially constructed problem, really. I mean, scheduling, we know scheduling, in the software industry as well, scheduling is always going to be fraught and difficult. So things are, always going to, things take often longer than you think they're going to take. Because we have what's called a wicked problem, which is like a term that means, like you don't really know what the problem is until you start trying to solve the problem because it's so multifaceted. But, I've one studio I worked at, there was no crunch. And what I was really struck by was that that meant the developers didn't have to do their online banking during work, or talk to their friends during work, or read magazines like online, or, like when people worked, they worked. So, but in practical terms, I would say like if you're working in a studio and it's like, right, well, we're going to be crunching for the next three months. I would hope that's not going to happen. But I've had friends who've been producers who've said, like, okay, your other teams, so like on I'm not going to name the project, but like a recently high profile, large game development project, often these projects are, they have like sub-producers, like managers who manage different aspects, like there'll be like the animation producer, or the, or the, various levels of hierarchy. And a friend, like she was managing one area of the project, and she said, like, my team isn't going to crunch. And they said, that's terrible. You can't do that. And she said, well, we're going to hit the same targets, but we're not going to crunch. And she, good on her. And she did it, and they did hit the same targets because I would say actually, really band together with your colleagues and try and push back and say, well, look, or even like now if I was in a studio, I would say, look, I'm too old to crunch. But what I am going to do, but I'm mature enough to understand my productivity, and I'm going to give you, let's be realistic, I'm going to give you 6 good hours based on Pomodoros, and I'm going to get more work done. I'm going to get more work done than if I worked 10 hours, So I would, like realistically, people don't work more than 6 hours, and even if they spend 12 hours there anyway. I mean, this stuff has been measured.
I know that for a fact.
Well, yeah, like it's about self-knowledge, I think. And I would say like when you're going for a job, and I know this is easy for me to say, and I know it's hard in interviews and stuff, but I've asked this. Like I'm going to be open about this. I had this phone interview with EA once where I I think politely and professionally, it's if you ask that, you can say, so what's your studio's policy on working hours? Can you tell me a bit about that? And I got EA is usually not too bad in certain studios, but anyway, I got the answer. Oh well, our team is so dedicated to the project, and they just love the project so much they'll do whatever it takes to get it done. And I'm not going to name the project, but this was not a dream project. So I kind of thought, wow, that that kids franchise that you just mentioned is so lame. If I'm not going to work until midnight on that. Like, really, your team think that's. I mean, okay, that was a bit unfair. But really, honestly, they will tell you and I've been told this on several projects. I was told once for also like if you've seen my CV, you've seen all the license titles I worked on. Like, I was told on a particular franchise, this is going to be a career-making thing. This, do it for the game. Do it for the game. Oh, actually, I've got an example. I'm not under NDA anymore, so I can say this. So I was working on this Men in Black game, right? And it was incredible crunch. And the marketing director, the American marketing director, sent us a kind of like boostery, morale boosting, and that was his intention, email to the development team in Australia saying, hey, we know you're really working hard, but it's all worth it for the game, and it's going to be such a great release, and we're planning this amazing launch party. We're hiring we're hiring this amazing venue, and we're getting all these, this is our marketing campaign, and these are the celebrities we're inviting to the launch party, or something like that, which makes you feel really good stuck in Australia. And I was so angry, I sent an email back, not to him, but to the whole studio, like 100 people.
Oh, wow.
But I excluded my bosses. They saw it anyway, I'm sure. And I said, well, thanks. Because he actually said, is there anything I can do to help? Just tell me. And I'm like, yes, you can do the dishes that my roommates are angry about. You can go to my friend's film premiere, like of this independent film that I couldn't, and he hates me now. You can call up my boyfriend and go out on a date with him because I can't. You can, I list all the things he could do for me because I was so angry about that. God, I've gotten off topic here, but honestly, don't get yourself into that situation. You can, I think it's about, being open about these issues and discussing with your colleagues and say, hey, is there another way? I think collectivity is your power. I mean, you feel powerless when your manager's telling you stuff, right? But actually having I think it's about professionalism as well. I don't think it's very serious and professional to have a long hours work culture when we know scientifically, like all the science is there that it doesn't give you the results you want. It means it turns you into a low productivity worker. I became very unproductive after years of that. I found it very hard to concentrate. I was always being distracted. I think the way to deal with it is to find a way not to do it, because you're going to find yourself in a situation where you've got a kid or you've got like an actual life or something. And if you haven't dealt with it early enough, you're going to just be pushed out. I've seen this with colleagues, that they've been kind of pushed out of the industry because they had a kid. And we really need to, support, if you're a senior colleague as well and you see a junior colleague, working all hours and stuff, checking and like committing code at midnight or something. That doesn't help anyone, and it makes everyone look bad as well. And also they're creating bugs. I think you need to like provide good mentorship is to say, hey, as a team, we've got to look after each other, and together let's try and negotiate with our manager a different way to do things. I know it's kind of utopian to say that, but it's really, there's no good crunch. Maybe apart from short periods of time, maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, Aloy just mentioned that we should look out for each other, including the higher ups and the people below. Like, everybody should look out for each other. If you notice your colleague is like unhealthy or they look tired or exhausted, hey, just let them know, like, hey man, you gotta take a break. You gotta do this and that, and you gotta speak up to your superiors. If if your health is bad or if your productivity is down, just you gotta speak up. And the longer you don't speak up, the more it's just gonna hurt your health and your mentality and stuff like that, and your morale.
Yeah, in general, but although there is a danger about, I think there's a danger in individual, in taking action on individual way. Because I don't, I'm friends with a lot of my old bosses, but they're bosses, you can't 100% trust them. I mean, as human beings, they might be great, but their role is to look out for the company ultimately. So even human resources people. So if you go to them with a problem, like I've had friends go to, nice, they can be the nicest of people, but I would say talk to your colleagues before you talk to the HR manager, or your like really, it's because you can't 100% trust management, even the nicest management, some of whom are my best friends. Talk to people who have the same interests as you, and that's usually your colleagues or your creative leads or something. People you can trust, and say, look, I have this health problem, or look, I'm a bit worried about, or identify. I mean, often in a workplace, there's like one or two people who are, who will speak up for employee issues, or who have people who are on your side who you can trust, and say, hey, maybe some of us should, together tell management that we're a bit worried about this crunch time, or when, things. Speak to your colleagues first, and then do something collectively. That's, because they can't victimize, if there's 10 of you, they can't, they can try, but, it's much harder for them to say, well, all these 10 people, they're bad apples, or they've got a personal thing, or, because just based on certain experiences, that's, people can paint you as like an individual troublemaker, or, someone who's not committed, or whatever. Harder to do that with 10 people or 5 people or even 2 people. It's still a corporate workplace. These like our bosses, they'll kind of wear jeans, and like they'll jeans. They'll wear, they'll dress casually. They'll look like us, and they'll speak like us, and they'll probably usually they're younger than me, and they can be your friends, and they can you can hang out and everything. But never forget that you're an employee and they're the boss. And that doesn't mean they're bad people if they take the side of the company over, your interests are always going to be slightly opposed in some matters, that's just basic economics, like you want to get paid more or they want to pay you less, etc. It doesn't mean they're bad people or you're a bad person. It means, know who you're allied with. Ultimately, I believe that productivity, it benefits the game. It benefits the company as well if you're working productively, and good bosses also believe that as well. But ultimately, like even good bosses, will just align with your fellow employees first. Even nice bosses are still your boss.
Yeah. In the end, they're still your boss. And real quick, back to that story about the marketing guy from EA. Like, what was the aftermath? Like, did they get mad at you? Like, what happened to you?
That was Atari. That was Atari.
Oh, it was Atari.
Yeah. Actually, I think there were infograms at the time. Oh no, I didn't actually send it to him. I sent it to the whole company. I got a few private responses. People kind of giving me thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, that was during particularly bad crunch, and I literally, the aftermath was like, I kind of left. I left the company. It was actually I stayed around another 3 years, I think. But I think I was a bit untouchable in that I was a union member, not that it was a unionized workplace, but I think I knew my rights and I did my job, and I think I was a little bit untouchable because of that. So I was okay. But it was kind of embarrassing when I left that job because during that period, I had thrown a lot of things at the walls in my office because I had an office because I was doing sound. And when I was really, you just go crazy during these periods, extended crunch. And I would throw things at the wall. And people wouldn't notice because I'm a sound designer, right? So I make loud explosions all the time. And it would be like holes in the wall, but I'd cover up with game posters. So I covered there were these holes in the wall that would just lasted for years, and I just had posters all over them. And when I left my job, I had to take the posters down and then reveal all the damage I'd done to the walls of my office.
Oh my gosh.
I left the building before anyone could see, really.
Oh my gosh.
But I did kick the wall near the elevators once, and I did get reprimanded for that. But that's when an IT guy, that was because of a backup thing that wasn't my fault, and it was an IT guy's fault. And instead of yelling at him, I kicked the wall and I put a hole in the wall, and I got in trouble for that. But honestly, I was pretty calm compared to I've seen people in crunch do things like punch the wall. I won't recommend that because that's bad for your. I do kung fu, and you got to look after your hands, right?
Yeah.
I've seen certain member of management punch an art lead. People lose it and they don't behave rationally when there's bad working conditions, basically.
Wow. Katharine, great stories, but before we're going to head into the lightning rounds, but don't forget Game Devs. You can check out my website at gamedevloadout.com for all the resources and things that we just talked about with Katharine. You just type in the number 90 in the search bar to find her episode. And now, Katharine, are you ready to crush the lightning round?
Yes, I'm going to be. I'll try and be as speedy as lightning. Yes.
What was holding you back from joining the game industry?
Nothing really. I was very lucky to start at a time when they were actually aggressively recruiting game developers in the late 90s. It was a good time to get a job.
What's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
I'm not very successful, but in terms of productivity, the Pomodoro technique, definitely recommend it.
Pomodoro technique, yeah, I'm definitely going to link that up so Game Devs can learn more about that. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice was someone telling me that all programmers feel stupid most of the time and are not prepared for the work they're about to do, and they just research it. So yeah, that made me feel better about being a developer who doesn't know what they're doing. That's a normal feeling, apparently, and yeah, even big tough guys feel like that secretly.
Yeah.
Wow.
What's a great marketing tip to make yourself and your game stand out?
I'm going to give a cynical answer. I'm going to say if you're releasing a mobile title, get featured on the App Store and research what kind of thing Apple are looking for at a particular time. That's a bit of a cynical answer. And I'd say PC games, like building a community early, building a community that's going to champion you on Steam, for example. But I'm not a marketing expert, and so, yeah, I can't give advice based on success.
On your last talk for GDC, you talked about game design tools. So I'm curious, what resources could we use to be good at game design?
There's everyone knows about this. Like Mark Brown has the game designers toolkit series on YouTube. I would say there's a lot of free GDC public videos, but yeah, I would try and read. I would try and read some books. It's hard to read books, and no one reads books, but actually, I think give it a go. Jesse Schell's book, The Art of Game Design, Book of Lenses, is one of my favorite books. I think that's a good book to read. But yeah, there's lots of resources, and read. A lot of people don't.
Yeah, I started reading 2 years ago, and I've been able to do a lot of stuff because of that. So yeah, I highly encourage people to start reading again, because there's definitely a lot of knowledge in those books. Now, this next question is a bit of a doozy, so take your time if you need to. Imagine you woke up the next morning in a brand new world, and you knew no one. You still have all the experience and knowledge you currently have today. Your food and shelter is taken care of, and you have a laptop. What would you do step by step on the path to join and become successful in the game industry?
I would go to, if it was the top priority in my life, I would move to a place, a part of the world, maybe a city where lots of, game development was happening. And I'd start rebuilding connections. And I'd definitely try and find a project to work on, with other people and start building those connections. I think the only jobs I've ever gotten through people I've worked with or the people they've worked with. So yeah, building those connections by moving to a city that, don't move to the Paris suburbs. Move to California or Austin or Montreal or I don't know. There's places in Europe you can move to as well. But yeah, it's being in the right place at the right time is what I do.
Building up the social connections, so important. We have reached the end. Go ahead and give us one last parting piece of guidance and how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Think about, my best piece of advice is think about where you want to be in 10 years' time, where you want to be 20 years' time, and use that perspective to make your decisions. Like, passion is all very well, but you can, like, how are you going to sustain, what you're doing? Think about building a career, like, in a serious way. If you don't want to be like most people who only have a career for 5 years and leave, basically. And what was the other? What was the question about, like, contacting me or something? My Twitter handle is haikus_by_KN. Haikus as in the Japanese poem. And my email address is Katharine.Neil, that's Katharine with 2 A's, .neil@gmail.com. And I will be at GDC at the showing our game Astrologaster in the Indie Mega Booth. So if you are attending GDC, drop by the Mega Booth from Wednesday to Friday and check out our game and say hi.
Awesome, Katharine. Great stories. Thank you for going into a deep detail with the stories. They're really interesting to hear about. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. For that, we are truly grateful, and we will catch you in next time.
Thanks, Tony. Good luck with the rest of your podcasting.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Game Devs, for listening. I hope we brought you value today. Equip yourself with the best loadout and take action. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast with iTunes or Castbox to listen to more inspiring stories and gain valuable knowledge. I greatly appreciate it if you share the show with your fellow peers so that they can also be motivated. Until then, I'm your host, Tony Chan, and I'll catch you next Wednesday on the Game Dev Loadout podcast. Peace.